Hello, I think we're rolling. Just as an addendum to that, on the keyboards and the mice, on some of these older PC cases and related to them, you have a PS2, two PS2 connectors, purple and green they normally are. And I never know which one is which, so I just try, till it works. I've never remembered things like that. So one of the things is some of the old, it's hard to get an old PS2 mouse because a lot of the PS2 mouses back then were wheel mice. They had a little ball and they had two wheels. So you moved left and the ball moved left within a confined area and it moved a little wheel and it gave you a signal on the wheel level and movement of the wheel. So it had two wheels, one going horizontal and one going roughly vertical. And it sometimes had a third wheel for another indication. But you were moving a ball within a confined area over wheels, which is good in certain applications. Sometimes people use some of that application for a handheld scanner where you run it over something and it measures distance with the wheel and all that kind of thing. And if you've multiple wheels, it can even measure movements of your hand in kind of a rotational space, so that it can interpret it from the movement of the wheels into a concrete image. So the thing is that sometimes, particularly for the mice, a nice optical mouse with a laser under, or it's basically a camera underneath that takes a picture of the surface underneath, and it makes its calculation of movement based on that. So it's continually taking little pictures of the ground underneath the mouse, and it's interpreting then from those pictures whether you're moving up, down, left or right. So it's the same as the ball, really. It's measuring your movement, but it's doing it kind of like with a camera. So if you have a crosshairs and you take a picture of a camera and you move the camera a little to the right and take a crosshair, another picture, the little mouse will be able to interpret that you've moved a little bit and that you've moved right or you've moved left or up or down, and it kind of interprets the environment under the mouse to give you an indication of the same movement you get from the wheel in the other kind of mouse. But the thing anyway is, so the kind of the optical mouse, the modern one, has kind of these little Teflon pads which are good to move around, much easier to move than the ball mouse, the internal ball, and the other end then is the trackball with the ball on top, which is very good in a confined space. So in a DJ environment, maybe you can get down, or a sound environment, you can get the footprint of the trackball down, but you don't have the room or the space to move a mouse, even a wireless mouse. And sometimes you don't want a wireless mouse, you want a physical mouse with a wire, so you don't have to deal with the bollocks of signals around you and stuff. So a wired modern optical mouse, if you have the room, is the best for use. But I want to get into a PS2, so I use a converter. So I have these converters here that go from USB to PS2, and then I have another one here which goes from serial to PS2. So these are a route into the PC through the PS2 keyboard lines and the PS2 mouse line. So I'm going to hopefully use them at some stage to try and maybe jack them as well. So you just jack in a mouse or a keyboard or whatever and try and negotiate my way through the signal lines to do the same thing with those, so that everything will be jackable. So you won't have a mouse connector or whatever, you just jack in. And everything's on fucking jacks. And I decide that number 7 is going to my keyboard. So you fuck off if you think you're messing with my setup. You're not getting any fucking entry in there. You don't know what's what. You could get a fucking jolt to power, so stay clear, So give your own physical space. You'll know that port 1 is your mouse, port 17 is your keyboard. No one else will know. So it's easier to protect yourself, and you can just have a patch bay and you take away your keyboard, your mouse, your fucking, your Boss guitar rig, you can have a 12K rig and you jack it into 3 ports, you know? That's the idea anyway. That's where I'm hopefully going. So I just thought I'd show you these little PS2 USB connectors, and there's kind of the serial connector, and a lot of communication is done over the serial connector. So it's a way to just plug in a communications device as well. So you could jack in a modem, or you could jack in an Ethernet cable or whatever, like. And you'll be the only one that knows what jack is what. So you won't be exposing yourself. They'll have to go in the back of your cabinet and fucking decipher your wires, which is hard for someone uneducated, and it's hard to get someone educated in this area, particularly if you're doing your own configuration. So you can configure it the way you want, and you'll have physical security. A lot of people talk about information security, but the best security is physical security. A door is much better than a computer firewall. If you have a machine that's isolated from the external inside a door, it's much safer than a fucking firewall to sell to Elon Musk to launch a ship, like, you know? So you break all these things with physical, real security. It's the most effective. So if you have sensitive documents, you keep them in a locked room. If you have a server that you don't want to talk to, you isolate it through a bridge or whatever. Physical security is the best security. This information security is bollocks.